Our guest today, Darren DeStefano, is a partner of Cooley out in Reston, Virginia. Darren and I used to work together at the SEC in the SEC's Division of Corporation Finance, and he's been doing deals for the last 2 decades. And recently he did a very interesting deal for Vital Farms, an IPO of a certified B Corp. I'm Brock Romanek, today on Zippy Point. So Darren, can you give us an overview of the Public Benefit Corporation? I'm not that familiar with it. I remember I've blogged about them a little bit here and there over the years, but it just hasn't been my forte. What are those all about?
Sure. So public benefit corporations, and they kind of come by different names depending on which state you're dealing with. But in Delaware, they're called public benefit corporations, or corporations where the boards of directors actually have a broader mandate than simply maximizing value for stockholders. The traditional fiduciary responsibilities of boards of directors, of course, for a corporation are maximizing the value of stockholders, and ultimately they'll be judged based on how well they go about doing that, and then there's different standards of their duties depending on what types of transactions or circumstances they face. But in the public benefit corporation, which is actually a separate component of the Delaware General Corporation Law, establishes public benefit corporations, which are in fact simply an election. As a technical matter, so any corporation incorporated in Delaware can elect to be treated as a public benefit corporation. Those boards of directors have a broader mandate to not only consider the interests of stockholders, which they continue to have that responsibility, but they balance that interest of stockholders with additional interests that are defined in the charter. And so in fulfilling their fiduciary responsibilities, they are not necessarily guided by what's going to maximize value to stockholders, but really rather what's going to, in totality, be in the best interest of the various stakeholders that are defined into the charter, which could include employees, it could include the environment, it could include animals, it could include really anything that the company wants to build into the charter. So that's what a public benefit corporation is. And again, they have different names in different states. And some states don't actually even have that in their corporate code. But in Delaware, it's a relatively recent addition to the code. And we're starting to see more and more companies elect public benefit corporation status in Delaware.
Are companies using Delaware like they would for a traditional public company, in that since the law is more developed there, or the courts are more business savvy, that they elect to be a Delaware public benefit corporation compared to other states?
It's an interesting question. And one of the things we struggled with a little bit in the IPO that we'll talk about is there isn't really a lot of developed law as it relates to matters having to do with the specific public benefit corporation election. And so there's some uncertainty as to how that might get played out in, say, a breach of fiduciary duty lawsuit or something like that. That said, the companies are still completely comfortable going into Delaware. All of the corporate law, all of the history, all of the case law, and all that sort of stuff that nevertheless continues to by and large apply. Companies who growing, that sort of thing, doing venture financing, et cetera, are still very comfortable being in Delaware for a lot of those reasons, even if there's not a lot of developed law around the specific, aspects that have to do with treating public benefit corporations differently than, say, a traditional Delaware corporation. But it's Delaware by and large. I mean, you see some in California as well, but for the most part, it's Delaware.